the hell's going on there? I see people have rearranged their seating a little bit. Mr. Jones is right up front. The undersheriff's kind of on the wing here. It's nice when you get out of your habit. Really good to see everybody. Thanks for coming out. Dean Bauman, thanks for having us in. Got a room full this morning. Where's the other? Thanks, Danny. Hey, well, if you don't mind, with your indulgence, I thought maybe I'd begin with a little health update. What's happening? Nothing. Well, anyway, there we go. I went to the cardiologist just last week. Got a good report from him. And I finished up. When I finished up cardio rehab at St. Peter's Health, and I got my certificate of completion from the staff there. I had 33 sessions on the treadmill and the bicycle machine and everything. But they've got a really good team there. I guess that's the point I'd like to make. They are really good people who know what they're doing and provide a lot of support and encouragement to people like me. So that was really fun. And I brought my special cup. Drinking coffee out of it. I got this from you all, from hometown Helena. And I got home from the hospital and I had this cup there. There were a bunch of flowers sticking out of it. And it said, this is from your hometown Helena family. So I'm not sure who all was directly responsible, but it meant a lot to me. And I've been using this cup ever since. And anyway, that was really special to get your good wishes like that. So I suspect Kelly Cresswell had something to do with that.
I think it was Emily McVeigh.
Emily McVeigh. Well, she was on my list too. Anyway, thanks y'all. Thank you everybody. Hometown Helena family. That's cool. So I've been using this thing a lot. Anyway, enough about me. What else is going on? Anybody here for the first time? Any intros? Anybody like this? Yes, sir. Somebody. Who are you pointing at there, Mr. Jones? Yeah, there's the gentleman. Yeah. The hell's going on?
Good morning.
Morning.
I'll put me on the spot today. My name is Sean Burkaw. I'm with a new registered apprenticeship college called Finishing Trades Institute, Upper Midwest, that is opening here in Helena.
Wow. Apprenticeships, very cool. Has that got something to do with the organized labor movement, AFL, or?
Yeah, we're associated with the
Painters Union, he says. Okay, well, we need apprentices, desperately. So congratulations, welcome to town, John. Danny.
Yeah, I spent yesterday afternoon, I went up to the Montana Burial Board, asked the Little Shell tribe to help them intern some human remains that had been archived. And it was kind of an eye-opener. There were a couple of remains that we interned that had been vaulted for years and years. And they asked the Little Shell to take the lead because we had done that with in August for the remains of a young native girl that had been, body had been removed. But the part that got it is government and organizations are realizing it's kind of morbid to be keeping a skull or something like that just for display, for your amusement. And it kind of disrespectful to them people. But it's really hard to do that when you go up to do that and you do it and there's no interest in that being done. Because I believe everybody deserves the respect of a final passing. And whether it's traditional or not, how you do that, it should be done. And I learned this from Lewis and Clark County several years ago when they had went out to all of the funeral homes around town, and we put in 135 cremains that had been sitting on shelves in funeral homes from back in the 1930s, so that they could all be respectfully buried. And we do this periodically so that that won't happen again. But it actually took a change in state law to make that happen. It happened earlier with the veterans. I had a good friend that lobbied the Montana State Legislature so that military groups like the American Legion and stuff like that could go around and gather the remains of our soldiers and dispose of them to all burial. So, and from that it came a change in state law to where that can happen by other individuals. So it's nice that organizations are stepping up. This was the Historical Society. A few weeks ago, you might have heard that the Carlisle Indian School did that, and before that, the University of Montana has done the same thing. So it's time we just look at dinosaur remains and not human remains. So it's an eye-opener for stuff like that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. We got our eyes open for there back then. Yeah, that does sound rather more of a skull on display. I might note another sign of winter, Stan Poach has got his long pants on. White man gathering firewood. Yeah. Matt. Let's get Matt a mic. Matt a mic. There you go, Matt.
I go on.
Okay. You know. Your choice.
Good to see you.
Hello everybody, Matt Farrell, Helena Lewis of Clark National Forest, and I wanted to hopefully make a recruiting pitch to some of you. We are right now recruiting for our Resource Advisory Committee. So this is a group of citizens that get together every year to help us spend your money on conservation projects all around central Montana. So these Resource Advisory Committees, or RACs we call them, they fund all kinds of projects from trail projects in the South Hills, youth programs, we do invasive weeds, all sorts of good stuff. But basically how this works is counties choose to pay into these RACs, they're Title II funds, and in order to spend them, we need a diverse group of citizens to come together and help us decide which projects we want to fund. We typically have between $200,000 and $300,000 to spend. Last year we had over $500,000. And in order to do this, we need help from citizens. So it can't just be anybody. We are looking for people that have specific backgrounds or are from specific interests within the community. So I believe we have 4 vacancies right now, and they can be filled by any of the following 5 categories. So we can use somebody from the commercial timber industry. We can use a non-timber affiliated organized labor member. We can use somebody from a nationally recognized environmental organization, so that could be a Sierra Club, a Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Ducks Unlimited, something like that. We can use a Montana state level elected official, so there's a few of those in the room that might be interested in joining something like this. Or we can use somebody who's a member of an American Indian or Alaska Native tribe. So, that is my pitch to you. The other pitch that I would make is on our current RAC that's carried over from the last year. I believe we only have 2 folks. Dan Poach is one of them. that reside in Lewis and Clark County, which is one of the biggest contributors to this RAC. So if you want your dollars spent locally on projects that affect the communities right around Helena, I would advise you to do that. Otherwise, your money might get spent in any of the other counties that pay into this RAC, which is fine, we love them. But we want to make sure that your dollars get spent here. So that's my pitch to you. If you're interested in joining, or if you know anybody that you think might be a good fit for something like this, come and talk to me, or ask Dan about it. He's been a member for a couple of years. Thanks.
Pretty good. All right. Thank you, Matt. RAC got pretty involved in the wild and scenic Missouri River as it developed. Grazing rights, motorized boats, non-motorized boats. Peter, come on up. Let's take advantage of that. Let's be sure our county gets its fair share.
Pedro, thank you, Jim. Real fast, this is a crazy season for me because the farmers market's got its last weekend this weekend. So come on out, get the last of the fresh produce and fruits. And ski patrol is starting. November 8th is a Friday. That evening is the Art Walk downtown. We're also conducting the second annual Rail Jam, where the kids are going to slide down the handrails on their skis and snowboards at Constitution Park. This is a ton of fun, and a ski patroller scares the crap out of me. So come on out, it's going to be a great evening, November 8th. Thank you.
Bring your first aid kit.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Wes has got something for us.
Morning, folks. West Valley City, East Helena. Always inviting you all out to East Helena to join us for things. Tonight, the Chamber of Commerce is hosting their business after hours from 5 to 7 at East Helena High School. It's being sponsored by Northwestern Energy. And East Helena High didn't get the opportunity to have a grand opening because of COVID, so it's a little late in the game. However, it'll be a great welcome to folks that have yet to see the high school. Thanks, Joe Dooling reminded me about the East Helena High football game this Friday night as well. So if you haven't been to a home football game to see that beautiful stadium and watch the sunset over Mount Helena, I would encourage you to come out to that as well. That's at 6 o'clock on Friday night. And then a week early, but Halloween next week, we always have a big trick-or-treat event on Main Street. Main Street's closed from City Hall down to VFW, and we will have all the businesses and homes giving out candy and treats in a haunted house. But also there will be a trunk or treat, so a classic car show down Main Street as well, of old cars giving out candy too, and the Pontiac Club of Helena is doing that part. So come out to East Helena, we've always got something going on. Thank you.
Always do. Very good. Thank you, Wes. Yeah, take a look at that high school. Yeah. It's a beautiful facility. Really neat education going on there too. What else we got? John.
Well, good morning. One of the things that I do is serve on the Lewis and Clark County Fairgrounds Board. And we've been meeting yesterday. A lot of good things going on out there. New parking lots on the east and west side of the exhibition hall. The Optimist came out earlier in the week, striped it, so that's all done. I was able to drive through the main gate and actually went pretty smooth. There's been paving for about 30 yards, and that looked like a bomb hit that place before. The dueling pianos event, which took place on the 12th, a couple weeks ago, was successful both for the fairgrounds, or the Fairboard Foundation, and for the two high schools that were covered. There was competitions between Capitol High and Helena High, and each of the booster clubs and the foundation board received about $3,000 out of that. It was good. Nice attended. People really reacted positively to it, so we're probably going to keep that as an annual event. And this was the first one. We worked out a few kinks. That should go on well. Some things going well out there. And Fairgrounds is solid in the black, a little over $250,000, so we're in good shape.
Wow, that's great to hear. Thanks, John. This is the powwow. That was the last chance community powwow. Really, really nice. The grounds, the building, everything. What's that? Yeah, I see. No, Mr. Downing's here. We got a good statewide candidate. But Troy, why don't you come up and get in the on-deck circle here. But Lisa Leo, Callio's here. Lisa, come on up too. You know, Lisa's running unopposed for clerk of the district court, and she wasn't able to be here last week, but we thought maybe we'd introduce her and you'd get to see her and welcome her and tell us a little bit about the job maybe. What do you guys do up there anyway?
So I'm running unopposed, thank goodness, for the clerk of district court. I've been there for 24 years. Started out at the bottom, worked my way up. I've been supervising since 2008. My bad. We're the keeper of the records for the district court office. We have 4 district court judges, 1 standing master. We have 5 clerks that run those courtrooms. They schedule all their hearings. They bailiff jury trials. We have 1 jury clerk that pulls all the juries. Big job. You get a blue notice. Don't wait to turn it in. You'll get a call from the sheriff's office. We have 5 main level people who greet all the customers, process all their paperwork, assist them with legal procedure, not legal advice. That's fine to walk. We keep accurate records. Any marriage licenses, divorces, guardianships, probates, civil cases, criminal cases, appeals, keeper of all the records. Not sure what else to say. We are the front line for access to the courts too. Nobody gets to see the judge without coming through our office. Any questions?
Well, you looking forward to taking the reins?
I am. I've been, like I said, supervising since 2008. It's a huge job. There's lots to do. Angie Sparks is retiring this year. She's been with her for 8 years. And we both learned a lot in the last 8 years together when she took over.
All right. Well, congratulations. You're going to step into a good role and an important role. One that most of us don't know a heck of a lot about.
Do you have any questions?
All right. Well, we are fortunate to have Mr. Troy Downey here, who's running for our Eastern District congressional seat. Troy, thank you very much for working us in. We know it's a big district. You got a lot going on. Appreciate you coming by.
Well, thank you. I just showed up to say hi. I didn't expect to speak, but I appreciate the opportunity. And also, John Driscoll, good to see you here. I'm Troy Downey. I'm the Montana State Auditor. And first of all, just one thing I just want to mention about my office that I currently hold. I'm incredibly proud of the team that we put together and the work that we're doing. And a lot of people don't understand what we do in terms of, we do a lot of elder fraud protection. We see a lot of securities fraud perpetrated against seniors across the state. We've had a lot of outreach dealing with that. A lot of financial literacy outreach. That's one of our charges under my securities umbrella. Not just with schools and high schools, but we've been working a lot with tribal communities across the state. I was the chair of the American Indian Alaskan Native Liaison Committee at NAIC. And we just did a lot of great work there trying to, to work with tribal communities and figure out how we can solve some problems that they wanted help with. And right now in my office we have quarterly meetings with government agencies, non-government agencies, tribal leaders, community members, stakeholders, not just in the state but around the country trying to solve problems. I'm really proud of the work that we've done there. And I mentioned that so if anybody does have questions or issues about financial fraud, elder fraud, or financial literacy, reach out to our office. I'm incredibly proud. Now I'm going to switch hats and go to the political side. Thank you all for being here at 7 o'clock in the morning to listen to politicians. Not everybody would do that. And I'll try to be brief. A lot of people don't understand, the root of politics. Noble word, poly meaning several or many, and ticks being small, blood-sucking insects. But I'm really happy, to be able to address you. I think we just need reasonable people to show up that are willing to, do the work, roll up their sleeves, and solve problems. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing in D.C. For the 2nd District in Montana, that's central and eastern Montana. I always tell people, don't listen to what politicians say and look and see what they've done. I'm really proud of the work that I've done leading up to this. You can expect the same thing. We've always had an open door. We've always invited all stakeholders to come in. I never promised I'm going to agree, but I do promise that I'm going to listen and consider, and I think we need more of that in our representation. And so I'm excited to be here. Rather than boring you with a stump speech, should I take questions?
Well, maybe one or two.
One or two? Hi.
Hi, yeah, can you talk about a couple issues you think are priority to work on, district concerns in Congress? Like,
The global ones, we've got to, make sure that we're working on the economy, that we're rating and spending, that we, deal with inflation. What I worry about, one of my biggest concerns is as we continue to spend money that we don't have, is we're taking the American dream away from our kids. I think of the opportunities I had as a poor kid, that I knew if I worked hard, there was a lot of opportunity in this country, and I was successful because, that's what I did, is I just worked, I had to. And what I worry about now is everything is getting more and more out of reach. I worry how the next generation, the young adults starting their families now, coming out of college, coming out of trade schools, getting married, starting their families, I worry how they ever, not just soon, ever buy their first house. I worry how they're going to build their American dream. And so I think a lot of that is, complete lack of fiscal restraint. We need to, start reining that in. And that's probably one of my #1 priorities. Hi.
Do you have a real desire to reach across the aisle and work with the opposing people so that we work in harmony instead of just for myself?
One thing that I have been very clear on is not everything is partisan. And I think that, that's become toxic, that, we just automatically make everything partisan. And I will say, again, I'm not changing. And what I've done in my current office is as we have sponsored policy, we've invited everybody to the table. Everybody's come in and not just been given, time, but actually given consideration. And good ideas come from everywhere, both sides of the aisle. And again, I never promise that I'm going to agree, but I do promise that I'm going to listen and consider. And here's a prime example. When I first got elected, I was going to a meeting, and somebody on the staff was walking in there and told me, "Well, I'll listen, but they're not going to change my mind." And I said, "Well, you just told me you're not going to listen. You just told me that you don't care about new facts, you don't care about truth, you don't care about another perspective." And so we have really worked on changing that culture, and I think we've been very successful in changing that culture. And my current office has been, we're regulating securities, insurance. I sit on the land board. We're protecting consumers. We're a criminal justice agency. That's not political. And we just showed up and did the job. Didn't matter, what letter you had next to your name. So my short answer to you is good ideas come from all sides. Not everything is partisan.
All right.
Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate this time at 7 o'clock in the morning, and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very good. Troy's, let's say, opposite number, or his competition is with us in the room, John Driscoll. John, maybe next week you could tell us how it's going on the campaign trail. Take a few minutes with us. And good luck to both you gentlemen. And I love that definition of politics. For sure, that from my old friend Utah Phillips. He's the one he said he was talking about D.C. and he says back in D.C. he said we call that Mordor where I'm from. So I hope that changes, and I hope whichever one of you two gentlemen get there can help to change that. Anyhow, moving right along, Eric Bryson's with us. Eric, why don't you start drifting up this way? Eric's the executive director of the Montana Association of Counties. He's the one responsible for all your property tax increases. If you haven't. He takes a worse pounding than this all the time up there. Good to see you, Eric. Thanks for coming. And he's not responsible.
What? That is the worst introduction I've ever had. I am Eric Bryson. I'm the Executive Director of the Montana Association of Counties, and it is a pleasure to be here. I've avoided this for the last 8 years since I transitioned out As the county administrator in Lewis and Clark County, I was forced to do this every Thursday morning in a smoky 6th floor Montana Club building where you'd stand up and get yelled at, and then you'd have to wait afterwards and get yelled at. Everything from dogs barking to property taxes was somehow my problem. Because my commissioners, who most of the time are in the room, would be the first ones out the door and leave me in. Commissioner Hunthouse was here, and I want to say thank you for that. So, the Montana Association of Counties, we are a member services organization. I don't go anywhere alone anymore because it's not safe for me, so I've got a whole bunch of my folks here with me that I'm going to introduce real fast, and I'll get to the topic again. Nancy Everson, if you stand up really fast. Nancy Everson is our government finance director. She's the one who provides technical assistance for anybody in local government who has any questions about anything to do with handling public money. You might recognize the name. I spoke with Lewis and Clark County shortly after I left. Carly King, if you stand up really fast. Carly King, I spoke from the state of Montana, who now provides technical assistance to all counties for cybersecurity threat assessments, and then does full managed internet. I'm going to mess this up. You say the word for me.
Managed network support.
Managed network support. So we have the ability now as a member services organization to provide technical assistance and enhance each county's cybersecurity and threat assessment awareness to be able to make sure that we're as hard as we can. And then in addition to that, she can provide the full service of packages for our member counties. Hope Barker can stand up next. Hope I stole from the private sector and the insurance side. And I shouldn't say insurance, especially with the insurance commissioner in the room, because one thing you guys don't know under MECO is that we are 3 separate trusts. We run a property and casualty trust, a work comp trust, and a health insurance trust. And although we're not regulated by the insurance commissioner, you would look and say and make it seem like, and we feel like we're an insurance company, and she runs our property, casualty, and work comp division. Next is Chantel Saparis. Stand up, Chantel. She's the only one that I assumed when I took the job over, and she stayed with me this long. She's our communications director, but she's also the best lobbyist that we have. As a part of our work every other year, we have the pleasure of serving in the legislature as technical advisors on everything to do with local government. I don't like to say lobbyist, but if we do have to say lobbyist, she's the best one that we have. Next, Jason Riddle. He's our second best lobbyist, but he's also my deputy director. And interestingly, when the legislative session starts, he's my boss. I have put him in charge of our lobbying effort. He's our government affairs director, so he literally gets to tell me what to do, because I am not a good lobbyist, and he is. And then finally, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Last but not least, Commissioner Devlin, would you stand up? Prairie County Commissioner Todd Devlin, all the way from Terry, Montana. I don't even know what he's doing here, but he heard free coffee, and he's ready to talk to politicians, so he's here.
Oh my God.
That's my group. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time to talk about the property tax situation, but I do think it's relevant, especially coming into the next legislative session. I'm going to do like a 10,000-foot level overview of where we stand in the local government side of property taxes, and then I'll answer questions, because I know we have a whole other presentation that's much more meaningful and important. The way property taxes work in the state of Montana are essentially the legislature gets to set policy objectives and goals. The objectives and goals, as I interpret them right now, with the current system we have in place for property tax collection, is 2 things: equity and fairness. So the legislature limits local government's ability to extract property taxes from the tax base. I'm going to talk from a county perspective. And the way that it works is that however much money a county got from you as the tax base in the previous year, they can get that same amount of money in the subsequent year, plus half the rate of inflation. So I want you to think about that. As inflation goes at 6, 7, 8%, the extraction ability of a county can only take what you gave them the previous year plus half the rate of inflation. Nobody in the room, I'm not loud enough? Nobody in the room, when I say that, believes it. Because you see year after year increases in what's extracted from your class 4 residential property primarily. And I think that's the root of the issue. So we get the ability on the county side to pretend you all live in Lewis and Clark County, no valuations change, nothing substantial happened. What Lewis and Clark County would be able to do is take the exact same amount of money in dollars from you next year that they received in this year, plus adjusted by half the rate of inflation. Plus, 5 new people walk in the door and they're Lewis and Clark County residents too. So once we've established the mill levy limit for Lewis and Clark County, let's just say it's 200 mills. For equity reasons, the new person that comes in, the new construction that's built in the county, gets assessed that same amount. So a growing community gets the benefit of the additional levy on newly taxable values, but still they're limited by how much money was generated in the previous year. Here's where it gets problematic. In the last year of reappraisal, we saw residential class 4 property increases somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 44%. So when I think of you guys and pretend you all live in Lewis and Clark County, and that is the bubble in which Lewis and Clark County can extract its property tax revenue. When class 4 residential grows by 40%, that means that everybody else pays less. They will take more from class 4 residential than they do from all the other classes because they're limited under that provision in law to just receive what they have in the previous year actually assessed plus half the rate of inflation. So we saw across the state class 4 residential eat up a greater portion of the burden of property taxes across the board. Three things that are important on this. The legislature sets the rate for all classes of property. Currently it's set at 1.35 on class 4 residential. The legislature sets the process for when appraisals happen. You might remember back when we had a 6-year appraisal cycle that was phased in over a number of years that didn't catch up with decreasing property values in the last economic downturn in 2010 to 2012. Remember that? And the legislature ran into session and said, that's not fair. Our values they're set artificially high, and we need to adjust them. And for policy reasons, the legislature said, yeah, property values need to be more reflective of the market, and they went to a 2-year appraisal cycle. Well, lo and behold, property values skyrocketed, and now we're doing a better job. They're doing a better job, and the Department of Revenue is doing a better job of keeping pace with increasing appraised values, which means a 2-year appraisal cycle captures more accurately changes in values. And when they're going up, you're going to have a higher burden, especially if they grow up higher, if they grow faster than the rest of the classes that we're talking about. So, I don't want to talk about the 95 mil thing unless that's a question. I don't want to talk about anything else on the property tax side, but I will answer questions. I want to talk about solutions as we go forward. It is, in my opinion, impractical for us to think that with the fatigue that the voters have on property taxes that we can continue with the system that we have. Legislators hate it. You go knocking on doors, I keep going to a senator, they keep knocking on doors, running for re-election or running for office, and the first thing that people say when they answer the door is, what are you going to do about property taxes? And I want to talk about that really fast. There will be plenty of property tax discussions and bills and legislation this next session, and I hope that our legislators and the public keep in mind that we have made a decision in this state to fund local government with property taxes. And when I say fund local government, I include schools. I carry these around as I'm a dork. And these are great pie charts. I think they're great. Nobody else thinks they're great. And do you know how hard it is to find a laminating machine nowadays? So I have these laminated, and I carry them around. It's the property tax by jurisdiction. This is an example of Lewis and Clark County, and it says outside the city limits and inside the city limits. And it's a super easy breakdown of the average percentage given the state and local schools, the city, the county, and then the county voted. This is just a simple pie chart that shows where your property taxes go. And as you'll see in almost every example, schools take a big chunk of your property taxes. There was legislation in the last 2 sessions to try and clarify what county treasurers needed to do to issue property taxes. This is the new version of it. I argue it's almost unreadable, but it still has roughly the same breakdown. My point is this. If we as policymakers send people to the legislature to say, we're going to continue to fund local governments on property taxes and property taxes only, and the public continues to say we're sick of paying property taxes, we're coming to a head. I hope that when we go into the next legislative session, we can have meaningful discussions about property tax reform that doesn't break local government, and that looks at additional resources to be dedicated to provide the infrastructure, the education, and the core services that we can deliver to counties. And as you're standing up with that, I will stop.
Wow, very good, Eric. Tempted to ask Eric Dietrich to ask an intelligent question, but maybe we better leave it there this morning. We do have a housing panel, and Emily, why don't you ask your folks to come up and get going on that? But I wanted to just welcome Commissioner Devlin, and especially. Was Jerry Devlin your dad, Commissioner?
Yes.
Wow, all right. Jerry Devlin, who's since passed, was a long, tall drink of water, kind of a great Montana civil servant, cowboy type. The Devlin Ranch is on Cherry Creek, right?
Correct.
Right, just north of Terry, Montana.
Correct.
Yeah, and Jerry served in the Montana House and Montana Senate. And he was very kind to me as a young lobbyist. It was a very good voice for his community in eastern Montana. And did a lot of work. So it's really good to see you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I remember one time there was a spirited debate on either the House or the Senate floor. I don't know what the topic was, but it was getting kind of Western, and people were arguing, and Jerry Devlin stood up and he said, "Mr. Speaker," he said, "we must be about half brain dead here." Somebody said, "Why don't you round up your fraction, Jerry?" But he was great, so it's great to see you, Commissioner. Anyway, tales from the Montana Capitol. So Emily's going to introduce our housing panel, and we're going to get going on that. And thanks very much. Here you go, Emily.
Well, I'm going to start out on the housing panel. I often just come up here and talk and don't tell anybody who I am. I'm Emily McVeigh with the United Way of the Lewis and Clark area. We are the lead on the Housing First and case conferencing and continuum of care housing projects in the Lewis and Clark County area. Montana is a statewide continuum of care, and all the things that we decided to do at United Way, we decided to take that on about 8 years ago. So we have a lot of conversations about housing at our office. We bring people to our office every week to discuss our unsheltered population, try to connect them to resources and housing. And we've also led several different conversations for the community on the dial for the community improvement plan. And we hope to lead the emergency sheltering conversations last year. So we do a lot in housing at United Way, which seems off base to a lot of people, but United Way is really moving in that direction, taking on projects in the community. So I'm really quickly just going to give an update on some projects of people that weren't able to attend today, and then I'm going to turn it over to our guests. Most of you guys know that Good Samaritan is working on opening a women's shelter called Roots Place. They went through a process of getting a conditional use permit last year, and then the building issue came up, and so they had to move in a different direction. They partnered up with Family Promise, who was working on expanding their day center into a stabilized shelter, which is another thing that people ask a lot about, is Family Promise does do the church housing, and they're going to continue doing that in our community, but they're also building a stationary shelter, which a lot of Family Promises across the country are doing, to provide more housing options for the families that they work with. Yesterday, Renee Bauer, their director, said they have 26 families on the waiting list. So the more we can help provide sheltering for families, the better. So Good Samaritan and Family Promise will be working together to build a shelter on their day center site, which is just directly behind the Taco Bell in Montana. There will be 16 rooms per floor, so the women will be on the bottom floor and the families will be on the top floor, from what I understand. And they're going to be breaking ground anytime. They've got 2 minor things to correct with their architectural study that went to the city, and then they'll get started. They're hoping for really soon, because they'd like to build throughout the winter and have it open as soon as springtime. So that is underway. Habitat for Humanity has lots of projects going on as usual. They have a Restore, which is available for the community to shop at, which supports the Habitat projects. That is in the old Sears building behind Pizza Ranch. They also have 6 houses going in, and I can't remember the name of the subdivision up there next to East Helena High School.
Highland Meadows.
Highland Meadows, thank you. They just finished 6 earlier this year, and they're getting 6 more already underway. When we went out for the ribbon cutting for the first 6, they already had a good chunk of things started for the next 6. So those are underway, and then they are also working on what will be called Rose Hills, and that is the land south of the highway next to Sarco, that old Sarco land. They've purchased hundreds of acres and working on more, and they'll have between 15 and 1,700 units of housing out there, of all different kinds, apartments, townhouses, condos, single family homes, and that will be a mixed use site Commerce. So a lot of things happening with Habitat for Humanity, probably some of the biggest projects that Habitat's doing in our country. So great work over there. They are also part of the Our Redeemer's Lutheran Church project, which has been going on for, feels like years and years. But that is, still underway, still in conversation. There's a lot of things that get bogged down with working out details with the sellers and the neighbors and figuring out how to get the road from the church to Green Meadow and several different items that just keep coming up to slow that project down. That is a project that Rocky Mountain Development Council, the YWCA, and Habitat for Humanity are collaborating on. That would be also a mixed-use site. Rocky would build something that looks like Red Alder. Habitat would have habitat houses, and the YWCA would build probably a transitional living shelter for the women that are coming out of their programs, because as we all know, there's not a lot of housing available, if any, and so they would give them a way to step into something different while they are still waiting for housing, and the women who need treatment in their main home would be able to move in there. So that's the projects that aren't here. The United Way is also working on a project to purchase the Helena Inn. We continue fundraising for that project so that we can purchase that building. It is 48 units with about 2.5 acres attached, and we would turn that into permanent supportive housing units, which means it's not just housing. People that live there would also be able to get supportive services as needed, so mental health, chemical dependency, independent living training. They would do all of that on site or with community providers that we would partner with. We've been contacted by the VA. They would like to get beds there to replace the Willis Cruz house that closed. And so those people would come live there in the studio apartments, but they would be service attached at the VA, so all of their services would happen out there. Other people that could live there are FUSE clients, the frequent users of systems engagement, and then they would be service attached through the FUSE project. But we would also provide all of that on site. One of the biggest things that our clients ask for is independent living skills training. A lot of people that have been either unsheltered or unstably housed have not learned a lot of skills on how to be housed consistently. And so we're developing that independent living training program to help with cooking, finances, car repair, whatever it may be. And then Jeff Busher at our office has also started what he calls the home team, and we have about 8 volunteers that are currently getting trained and starting to work with people who become housed for the first time in maybe a long time, and they are acting as mentors to those folks to walk them through from day one what it looks like to move into an apartment, how to run the thermostat, how to clean your home, how to talk to your neighbors, and they will walk with them for 6 months to a year as that mentor to make sure that the people stay housed, because sometimes our clients feel like they need to bring all their friends to be housed, and that doesn't work out. Or they play their music too loud, and that doesn't work out. We see a lot of people returning back to the streets because they just don't have some of the basic skills that are really easy to solve through mentorship. So those are the programs there, and I'm going to turn it over to Seth O'Connell to talk about Twin Creek Apartments.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Emily. A lot of great stuff going on. I'm Seth O'Connell. I work for United Housing Partners, and we are low-income housing developers trying to help the state and the region with solutions to the housing crisis. We primarily work through LIHTCs, which are low-income housing tax credits. There are 2 types of LIHTCs. These fund housing throughout the country. There are 4%, which used to be how a lot of developers created affordable housing on a larger scale because they're non-competitive, and as long as the dollars make sense, you can provide pretty big projects, and that was traditionally the way that a lot of developers did it. They're called 4% because there's a lower percentage of the total dollar amount that ends up funding these projects. Well, as construction costs, interest, labor costs, everything has gotten higher, and rents have not been able to keep up in the affordable outlet. Those have become more difficult. So what we did is we brought forward a project here in Helena called Twin Creek Apartments, which is being built right now on the corner of Alice and Dorothy behind the Auto Mall on Highway 12. We twinned, which is a newer way of looking at this development, 9%, which are competitive tax credits, with those 4% tax credits. And 9% tax credits are a more viable solution. Unfortunately, there's a very limited amount of them, and it's a very competitive process. So typically, the Montana Board of Housing once a year will award these tax credits to projects, and there used to be anywhere from 15 to 25 projects that would come before the state, and realistically, they had the possibility to fund 4 or 5 of those projects. This year, there was even fewer because even with those tax credits, it's just hard to make these projects work. As you just heard Emily explaining with the Lutheran Church project, it's not just how do we get these roads in, how do we talk to the neighbors, it's also how do we make the dollars make sense, right? One thing about developing rent-restricted housing is you know the outcome, right? There's no speculation of what are the rents going to be. You know the rent from day one. You know the rent from 2 years before you even bring that project forward. So it's hard work, but we were very fortunate to have a funding award last year for here in Helena on Twin Creeks. And I think a big part of that was Helena had the foresight to see and bring forward their own housing trust fund. So I don't know if everybody knows, but the city of Helena started a housing trust fund. We're the first project to use that fund. So Helena is actually putting their money where their mouth is, and they dedicated $1 million of housing trust funds to our project, which is at a low interest rate. So we used those funds first, and that went a long way with kind of layering that with state and federal financing. So without boring you with too much of the details, we will be bringing 72 rent-restricted apartments to Twin Creek here in Helena. Those include 35, 70% AMI units, so that varies a little bit based on your family size, but for a family of one, it's approximately $55,000. Michael will know those numbers maybe a little bit better than I will, but so 35, 70% AMI units. These are, your teachers, your state workers. A lot of people will qualify for these that aren't necessarily a stigma of what people think about for affordable housing. There will also be 25, 60% AMI units, which is a little bit lower income. And then part that we're really proud of and what we were able to layer together is we will have 12 units that are reserved for 30% AMI, which is the lowest AMI restriction. That's extreme low income. This is individuals making less than $25,000, people that are at risk of homelessness. And as they come into these brand new apartments, which should be coming online about this time next year, the first phase, that will open up other housing for more people. And we hope we can continue to not provide the solution, but be part of the solution in finding mixes of affordable housing that will bring in other people, and then that opens up other housing for other options as well. Any questions?
What's AMI?
Oh, sorry, yeah, AMI is area median income. So every county will get an area median income based on census data, and then that does adjust, and then incomes are based on that.
So one of the challenges in the housing space, both for folks in the market world and in the nonprofit side, is that it just becomes so darn expensive to build. Are the things that, the state and federal policy folks in the room, are there things that public entities can do to address the construction cost piece of the housing challenge?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I think everybody can do a part, and one of the biggest things is just time can kill deals, honestly. And I'm not trying to put that on public entities, but interest costs money, and anything that we can do to speed up the process, not making these houses safe or making sure the development goes correctly, but anything we can do to speed up that process is very helpful and can really increase the size. And that's one of the things that Helena's been very helpful for. In addition to the housing trust funds, they basically said, the community development department said, hey, you guys are going to go to the front of the line. This is affordable. You guys are including these 30% units. We're going to make sure that we're prioritizing getting you guys answers when things come up.
All right, so up next we have Michael O'Neill with Helena Housing Authority to talk about this upcoming project.
Projects. Good morning, everybody. I'm Michael O'Neill. I'm the Executive Director of the Helena Housing Authority. And bottom line is we all have an important role to play in addressing housing needs. Federal government, state government, local government, the private sector. The problems of affordability and supply have really come home to roost here in our local area. And it's a major challenge across the country. And so to your question, Eric, one of the fundamental challenges is one of resources. We really need to create additional resources on the federal level. You know, at a time when we're really having a housing crisis across the country and a true housing emergency locally, housing funding actually remained flat in many cases was reduced last year due to budget caps. And it really is demanding on federal level for us to invest like we've done at various times in our history when there's been a housing challenge in our history after World War II and in the 70s and early 80s and 60s. We made major investments. The state of Montana is one of the few states that doesn't invest state dollars directly into affordable housing needs. Marianne Dunwell is on an interim committee of local government that recently passed out of the interim committee a recommendation to do a state low-income housing tax credit that would pair with those tax credits that Seth was talking about. That's a very important priority. We've been working with county government and the city government on a whole variety of things that will bring resources and make mechanisms work very, be more effective. So because we have to address affordability, and the big underlying challenge locally is supply of housing. And so there's really hundreds of millions of dollars of projects that really need to be implemented in order to address the issue. I just wanted to bring up to speed on two things. We've been working, I'm president of Montana NARA, which is the association of all the public housing authorities across the state, including Montana Department of Commerce statewide housing authority. And we've been working on an issue that's kind of insider baseball, but it's very fundamental to getting resources into our communities. It's called fair market rents. And so trying to increase those so that we're getting federal dollars into our communities to help our families who need assistance in paying for housing, to make sure landlords are receiving the appropriate rents to pay for their increasing costs. And so we've been seeing some success. We've had great support from Senator Tester and Congressman Zinke in taking us to the highest levels at HUD. And so the recent fair market rents across the state, on average, are going up 19%, the highest percentage in the country, and locally they're going up 30%. Problem is, locally our rents have gone up 60% in the last 3 or 4 years. So we're conducting a statewide fair market rent reevaluation project, and under Montana Department of Commerce, recently contracted with a vendor who is an expert in doing these types of studies. And really, for the first time, we'll be documenting the recent rents, and will make a big difference, and hopefully will lead to increases in fair market rents. On November 4th, 130,000 targeted mailings will go out to renters in our state, including the local area, and hopefully people will respond and complete the surveys about their rents. At the Housing Authority, we've been working for many, many years. Mayor Smith can tell you how long he was involved in these issues of trying to improve and expand public housing in our community, our existing public housing. We've been serving the Helena community for over 85 years, and our public housing stock is that old. Stewart Homes was the first phase of that was built in 1939-40, and so it's not getting any younger. And so we are following a process called repositioning to allow us to be free of public housing restrictions and maintain housing that's affordable based on income like we do today, but it will open up access to financing so that we can remodel and redevelop all of our existing public housing. We have 366 public housing units at 30 sites throughout Helena, and so that work's underway. We have a pending application for Stewart Homes, which will be kind of the first phase of that effort. But we do need resources in order to do it right. One of the primary things we get through that process is that public housing properties have been restricted since 1986, where you couldn't build a single additional unit on public housing property. We'll be free of that once we go through this arduous repositioning process. And we have plans to add additional units on existing properties where we can take advantage of existing infrastructure, make improvements to existing residences, but also add upwards of 48 additional units just on the corner here of at Stewart Homes. We'll be looking at adding homes over by our Henry Anderson property, and then other sites on our own properties or adjacent properties to those sites. So a lot going on, but we need resources. We need, from our congressional delegation, we need to lift the caps on domestic spending on housing. We need a significant, major investment from the federal government to bring additional funds to the issue. We need to support funding for these needs at the state legislature, and we need creativity and additional resources on the local level. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Daniel Pocha. I'm on the board of Rocky Mountain Development, and I also sit on the chair of the board and the chair of several of our housing projects. But I'm not here to speak of them, but I'm as a concerned citizen. I go back as a toddler. We lived in the Stewart Homes until my mother could buy our first house. But I've always been concerned. I can remember when I was on the Indian Alliance Board of Directors, when we had a Native family that was kicked out of public housing. They violated their voucher because it was for 2 people, and there were 8 living there. So then 10 people that hit the street included an elderly woman and her caregiving son. So that was a tragedy for the whole family because you have some pretty strict rules when you have to go into housing like that. But I was on the board of directors of Rocky Mountain Development when we helped build the first Willis Cruz house and met that need, but the VA changed their outlook. They don't think transitional housing is really important as we do, but there's still a need for stuff like that as the YWCA does. But when we built Red Alder, that was a 4%, 9% project, 85 units, and we found out you had to build higher for scale. It used to be we did 30 or 35 units out of the 385 units we put together a rehab that was affordable, but you have to raise the scale to make that pencil out to where you can afford to manage a project like that. So there's all kinds of problems in there. At the Montana Club, we were there for the last thing. We had a couple of developers who were coming in and telling us how we needed affordable housing so that they could lobby the city for a development on the Upper West Side. But they also admitted that their highly trained and well-paid construction workers could not afford to get into one of their houses. Rocky did that when we did our high school houses, when we built it, and we had a house pre-sold to a pair of school teachers in Helena. And when the house was done and it was appraised, they no longer could afford that house because it come in higher than the appraisal that they were qualified to borrow. But Rocky sold it at a loss so that those 2 teachers could have that house. So there's a real conversation of what is affordable. A $465,000 house isn't affordable to most working people. So when you take people that are 30% of of that income for those low incomes. That's barely above the poverty level. And there's a lot of need for it, and there's a lot of change it has to have, because housing should be a human right, not a luxury.
Thanks for all that information, Daniel. We are out of time, but I don't know if people want to ask a couple more questions, if people don't have to leave. Yeah, or you guys can just come up and ask questions up here. Yeah. People will leave if they need to.
Thank you. This is a question for Seth, Mr. O'Connell. Seth, I'm Senator Mary Ann Darmo, one of those local politicians who can do something at the state level really to fast track affordable housing. So you mentioned the Helena Trust Fund, that helped you with $1 million to jumpstart your project. So the state has a state housing fund, and it was passed, I believe, in the late 90s. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. 1989? 1999, that's not that. But it's never been funded. So what can you and the rest of us do to use some of our surplus that we're expected to have, close to $1 billion this year, to fund it?
I hope, I'm not expecting you guys to know that, but yeah, anything that we can get into funding, and I do want to point out, Michael did a great job of explaining the challenges of it. We will take, when we're doing a development like this, we will take as much private lending as we can as well. So it's not all publicly funded. We are layering it, but we're limited to what we can underwrite on the private loan by how many other sources we can get. So if we can find ways to fund that, yes, it would be used to fund more projects, to make projects larger. Because that's one of the things, as Mr. Butch pointed out, you do have to make them larger now because the limit of the amount of funding you can get in an area, everybody needs it, right? So if Helena gets a project, it might be the only project that gets 9% credits for 7, 8, 9, 10 years plus, right? So we want to make sure we're providing as much of a solution to that community as possible. But as far as how do we fund it, Michael's going to be probably more useful.
Gonna get Senator Dundle on finance and claims.
Right, I think there's 3 things we're working on that I think will be critical. Mary Ann's been working with us on the state low-income housing tax credit project program. If we have that in the state, it would just be additional. It would really be married with that federal low-income housing, 4% low-income housing tax credit program to make those more valuable, make them more useful in developing new housing and preserving existing affordable homes. Second, we need to expand. Last session, there was a $50 million loan fund created to provide below-market financing to support new construction or preservation of affordable homes and redevelopment. Of coal trust funds, we think it would be good to add additional $50 million there, more, and lift restriction on that fund that currently you can only loan to property tax paying entities, so nonprofit developers are not eligible, particularly nonprofit developers are often serving the lowest income folks in our state. And then the third thing is this Montana Affordable Housing Fund, created in 1999. It's great to have a fund. We just forgot one thing. It didn't get funded. So for 25 years, we've had this fund. And so what's great is sometimes it takes a while to get things done. So we do have a vehicle at the state to put state funds into it, and that would be able to create a flexible fund, perhaps to provide grants and low-interest loans to housing projects across the continuum of need. And so those are the 3 things we're talking about. When I say we, it's the Montana Housing Coalition that involves all kinds of private developers, contractors, affordable housing developers of all types. And, we try to be reasonable on our asks, because we've never been funded really in this state. And so we our ask is much below what it really is. I really think, what we need is a sustained effort, like $500 million a year of legislative session for like 3 or 4 sessions until we catch up with this, or that our kids aren't going to be able to stay in these communities. I mean, it's really, we talk about this as a housing thing. It really is an income thing. Our incomes of working folks aren't keeping up with the cost of living here. Certainly the large retirement populations that we're going to see, they're not keeping up with the housing cost. If you care about disability, they're not keeping up either. Thanks.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you very much, Michael and Seth. Sorry the time is so short. We're getting down to it. So John, Troy, Andy, Joe, good luck. Eric, thank you for being here. Thanks for bringing your team. Chantel, really good to see you again. We began our days together at 7, many sessions. And Eric, as we get into specific proposals, maybe you can come back and we can evaluate them here together on Thursday mornings this coming winter.
Yeah.
Who might come join us for breakfast next week at the Old Salt, at the Union? Just real, come on, get your hands up. They're inviting us for breakfast. All right. Haley's got a quick vote, so we'll plan on that. Down in Lawrence, the adults, Millburn, Ernie's, we want to have some breakfast at 8 o'clock. So we'll see you there. Thanks very much, everyone.